Hello again. Welcome back to Vinyl Fury. I'm Dan, and I just checked, and it's been almost 4 months since my last video. And that really should be no surprise to anyone who's been following my channel for the last couple of years. It seems like videos are seasonal at this point. But it's the same old story. I just really haven't purchased much in the way of physical media in the last few months. But it's been long enough that I do have a stack of records to show, which I am excited to do. I've been keeping a list for a while just for this, and now is the right time. If I may, a little bit of personal business. I have been mentioning over the last year that I've been in a band called Umbrella Man. And when I posted my last video, I believe we had just started recording our debut EP. And that EP will be released in just 2 weeks, April 6th. It'll be available in all the digital marketplaces, iTunes, Spotify, Tidal, Google Play, Amazon, all that stuff. We'll also be doing a limited cassette pressing, and there's going to be some alternate artwork and a colored cassette shell. It's going to be really cool. I will show you the artwork for the digital release here. And I will say I did handle pretty much everything after the recording of the project. So we went to some friends of ours to engineer it. One producer to record the drums, and then we recorded everything else with another producer, a friend of ours. And after that, I ended up mixing the album with the EP and mastering it. And I've also created the graphic design, all the artwork, and handled all the publishing, all that stuff. I've done all of it, which has been a large task, and I've been very busy with it the last month or so. It's the first project that I've mixed entirely, top to bottom, and I've been, working in audio production for the last few years. I've been interested in it for a long time, but I've been active in it for the last few years and learning a lot. And when it came down to shelling out the money to have somebody else do it, we knew the person that we had in mind could do a great job, but as easy as it is these days to have music made, it's still expensive, no matter what. And when it came down to it, I said, I could try to do it on my own and save us this money. And the guys were at least interested to see what I could do. Worst case scenario, we ended up paying somebody to do it anyway. So I gave it a shot, and it turned out well enough. And that's what we went with. So it was an interesting experience, and I learned a lot. And as picky as I am, as critical as I am of audio and sound, I think I can say I did a good enough job. So I'll be interested to hear what everybody else has to say. But I'm proud of the songs that we recorded. Of the more than a dozen songs that we have, we recorded 4, and I think it's a pretty good showcase for what we do. It's been kind of a running joke in the band for a while that the sound of our band, the dichotomy of it, kind of sounds like we take you to the beach and then throw you in a volcano. So we ended up calling the EP Volcano Beach, and I made some imagery that reflected that. I hope it's a conceptual piece, and I really do. I think that's a pretty good description between the kind of melodic indie rock side
and the heavier. I like to say that we sound kind of like somewhere between Foals and Smashing Pumpkins. And I usually have to qualify it with, have you heard of Foals? And surprisingly, most people have, so it's turned out to be a pretty good analogy. And this is a pretty narrow presentation in 4 songs, but I think it gets the point across. And I've already been rambling for a bit, but this is all to say that that EP is coming up very soon. And there's going to be some cool physical representation of it. I just ordered the cassettes, so I don't have them yet, but I've also ordered some custom stamps to make some CDs. And this is a woodblock stamp of it's a 2-tone version of the cover. And I thought I was ordering a self-inked or a pre-inked stamp. Turns out I did not, so I had to order a separate ink pad. But I also had a small stamp made up. CDs, if you can see that. So there'll be some custom CD packages, but primarily the effort was toward a really cool cassette release, which I'm really excited to show, and I will next time. But I'll leave the links for our Bandcamp and SoundCloud and Facebook and all that stuff. So it'll all be available very soon, and I'm really looking forward to it. Also, to anyone who ordered the Bandages cassette that I mentioned pretty recently, thank you very much. It was really cool to see some people from the vinyl community purchase those cassettes, and it was really great to see Wes show his in a vinyl inbox. That was really cool for me, and he had some nice things to say. So thank you, Wes, and I'll leave a link for the Bandages release as well. So let's get into the vinyl update, as it were. And but of course, before that, some cassettes. So Nick Drake is one of my favorites, and I've talked about him a lot before. And I have all his records on vinyl, but I've been curious about the cassette releases that came out from Antilles in the 70s, late 70s. And I haven't found a Pink Moon on cassette yet, but I found Brighter Later on Discogs, and it was about $20. I was like, well, that's quite a bit for a cassette, but it was listed as a pretty much unplayed condition. So I've wanted it for a long time, and I decided to go for it. And then The Cellar, which was a record store in Ohio, I think, or Michigan, they messaged me and said that they also had 5 Leaves Left on cassette as well, in pretty much the same condition, from the same seller. Well, they bought a collection of tapes, and these both came from the same one. And if I was interested in that, I could add that to my order, and I thought, well, might as well. So now I have cassette pressings of these 2 albums, which I adore, and they sound quite good. They are in really excellent shape for how old they are. They're definitely among the oldest cassettes that I have, but it's really nice to get those. If I can get Pink Moon, I'll be very happy. Okay, moving on to the vinyl, of course. So once again, something that I initially bought on CD or cassette instead of vinyl because I felt it was too expensive at the time. But then I bought it and realized that I liked it quite a bit, and then thought, well, if I can ever find it for a decent price, I'll get it on vinyl. And this is the latest release from Minus the Bear. It's called Voids. And I did get this on cassette when it initially came out. And I liked the album mostly. But the cassette pressing was not phenomenal. There was a spot in it that the audio kind of got a bit wonky. So Suicide Squeeze, which is the label that they are on again, they've been doing $10 record, at least a few times a month, and this was one of them. So I figured $10, it'd be worth getting the record. So it has a die-cut cover, which is pretty neat, and it's on a clear vinyl with the blue and black splatter with a bit of peach in there as well, and a bit of, I guess, white, which is pretty cool. I think this is the largest colored pressing, if I remember correctly. Well, it does sound a bit better than the cassette, and for that price, I figured I would get it. So on my Christmas list, I decided to use the Amazon wish list, which meant I could put some records on there, knowing that if my family ordered them, they would come in the protective record packaging, and they would just wrap that, so I didn't have to worry about them not knowing what to do with vinyl records if they bought it from a store or something. So I put this on there because it's another one that I purchased on cassette at first. This is the latest Mutemath album called Play Dead, and this is a double LP. They did put out a deluxe edition that was on colored vinyl, and it had a slipcase and was more expensive. This is just the regular double LP on black vinyl. But I do like this album quite a bit. Their first record I absolutely love. And what I liked about that, I saw less and less of in the albums after that. But this album, it's interesting, and I think I showed the cassette before and talked about it, but this album took about 5 years to make, and they made another record in between there and put that out called Vitals. And this is the last album with their drummer, who has been a big part of their sound. So I thought the cassette sounded great. I liked it quite a bit, but for some reason, one of the songs was cut off. It only played for about 30 seconds before it jumped to the next song. And I looked it up, and apparently it wasn't just my tape. That was a common complaint about the cassette pressing. I don't know what happened there. Somebody screwed up, but it wasn't for a lack of sound quality. I thought it sounded fine. It was just a mess up. But I just took a shot and put it on my Christmas list, and then I got it on vinyl. And it sounds pretty good. Even though it's pressed at United, it's one of theirs that there's no major issues. So that's nice. So Spotify has been a subject of debate in the music community for some time. I mean, since it has been around. And there's a lot of argument about its merit, about its sustainability, about its ethics in the music industry. But there really is no denying the usefulness of being able to sample something before you buy it, and the ecosystem in which you can make your own radio station and be introduced to similar sounding music through the route that you choose. So that's how I came across this band. This band's called Turnover, and this is Peripheral Vision from 2015. I think it's their second or third. It's on Run for Cover Records, which is a label that's becoming known for a sound, like many indie labels have done. You kind of have a genre that they lean into, and then people just kind of go to that label for that sound. And Run for Cover is definitely doing that with this band. Super Heaven, who used to be called Daylight, as well as Basement and Citizen. All of these bands have a pretty similar sound. I mean, if there was a packaged tour with all of these bands, it would be pretty huge. But I think I created a basement Spotify radio station, and this came up, and I loved it. And they've been around for a while, and they've got a pretty decent following. I had not heard of them before. So the sound is, with these guys, it's a little less of like the neo-90s grunge sound, but it's in there. But it also has a more like indie rock vibe into it as well. And this is a recent repressing, clear with orange haze in it, which I think is quite neat. And this is their most recent album, Good Nature. Came out not too long ago. Gatefold. It's, I guess, what you would call it, pink, like a dark pink, magenta vinyl. And Good Nature has more of the indie rock vibe. And apparently before they were a bit more aggressive. I haven't heard their first record. But I really enjoy those two. I listened to them both on Spotify and liked them so much that I bought it on vinyl. So that is where, the usefulness of the service and those like it lie. But there still is a big issue about how those big companies, those big services use the content and pay very little for its distribution to their millions of paying subscribers. I've had my own music on Spotify before, and I've seen activity that results in very, very little payout from that. So the topic is it's definitely pertinent. It is a valuable tool, but it's definitely problematic for artists especially. So hopefully there's a middle ground to be found there. Anyway, Jawbox. This is the self-titled last album by Jawbox. Another band that I really didn't hear or know until very recently. One of those bands that influenced many bands that I love. In fact, their song Savory from the record before this, I believe, Deftones and Far together covered that song, and I love their cover of it. So I knew I would like this band, but for the longest time I just never looked into them. Them, Fugazi, Pixies, Talking Heads, all bands that were just far enough behind me when I got into music, really, that I didn't give them a good enough look. So this is the first Jawbox record that I've purchased, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's on Discord, which means it's very reasonably priced. All of their records on this label are, and I will definitely get the rest of them. This was, I want to say, $13.99, which just another example of how it is possible to make. And this is pressed at Palace USA. It's a quality pressing for sure. So it's just a great example of how you can make quality vinyl pressings that do not cost $30 or whatever. This was entirely worth the price, for sure. And I will get the rest of these. Jay Robbins from this band, he's also produced a lot of my favorite bands very recently. So there's that connection as well. All right, the last couple. Washed Out, Mr. Mellow. This is the most recent release. Came out last year, 2017. And this is the first one he's done on Stone's Throw. Previously, I think he put out one or two on Sub Pop. Yeah. And he's very much a part of like the chill wave genre. And this was a bit of a departure. And when it came out, people were kind of like, what are you doing? This is not the washed out that I love. And I will say the one or two songs that I'd heard before listening to the whole record, I kind of felt the same way. I just wasn't as interested in it. But listening to the whole thing, it really isn't all that different. It's not very long. I want to say it's about 35 minutes. But that tangential direction of sound that they kind of led with, which I found interesting. It's really not the vibe of the whole record. There's definitely still the washed out vibe that you know and like. I just had not been to the record store in quite some time, and I was just looking for something to get, and realized that I hadn't even really given this a whole listen. And even though I wasn't totally turned on by the first couple songs I had heard, I figured I would just go for it anyway and take a chance. I'm glad I did. It was about $19, so it was a big chance actually. But I am glad that I got it, and it is on this very cool yellow vinyl that matches the artwork very well. And I think it's a little darker than it seems to be showing up on camera. It's slightly translucent, but it is also opaque. It does seem like it's pressed at GZ as well. So that day at the record store, I picked up this and the Jawbox record. Two albums that I'd kind of been meaning. I've been looking at that Jawbox record the last couple of times I'd been in the store, and finally picked it up. And I do also like the conceptual nature of this cover. It's really a throwback to me to the 80s covers, where they're practical. It's it's a physical collage of different aesthetics together to make a statement. There's everything seems miniature, and it's not just one single silly picture. There's definitely effort put into the presentation, and I missed that in album art, so I really appreciate that. All right, so another band that I was a little late to was Rhye. Their first album, Woman, came out, I want to say 2013? It was a few years ago. And I didn't hear it till a bit after. Loved it, though. And it's been a while, but they finally put out the follow-up, which is called Blood. This is the cover. Very reminiscent, same kind of vibe as Woman. There's the gatefold there. Beautiful record. Synth pop. The vocalist sounds, and I believe I did say this when I first talked about Woman, very much has a Sade vibe. I was not certain whether the vocalist was male or female. It is a male, but has a very sultry, very sexy voice, and there's been a lot of comparisons to Sade, so if that says anything. And I pre-ordered it from Loma Vista, the record that this is put out on, and this is the blood red vinyl, which is pretty cool. It's kind of purplish, but if you put light behind it, it's more red and translucent. And in that pre-order, I got the bundled version with the single that had come out last summer called Summer Days. And it has that song and an instrumental and a couple of remixes on this 12-inch. Cool looking red and clear vinyl. Looks cool, unfortunately very warped. I don't know if you can see that, but I mean, this is somewhat straight, and it's very dish warped. And I told them that, and they sent me a replacement. This is actually the replacement, which is even more warped than the original. You know, what are you going to do? They tried, and they were pretty responsive and sent me out a replacement pretty quickly. But, yeah. I'm putting this one on my wall, so. All right. Geez. I feel like I've gone on quite a bit. But it has been a while, so thank you for joining me again. When I have the physical copies to show you in a couple weeks, I will. And I would be honored if you would check out the music. Pretty proud of it. I'm personally very invested in it, so I do want people to hear it. So yeah, I'll leave the links down below so you can follow along, and I'll be back somewhat soon to update. And thanks for watching. As always, take care. Enjoy your music.